Yeah, it is getting more and more like the NFL every day. College football across the board. Talking Michigan, of course. We got a special edition of Wolverines live right here at the Voice of College Football. So, folks, here's the deal. John D'Adamo, Michigan Live every Tuesday here at the Voice of College Football over on the Michigan channel. That's on Tuesday nights at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. But we get together from time to time and also present some more additional Michigan coverage here. And we are so happy to be joined by Tanner Wooten from Blue by 90. Tanner, what's going on?
Just another day here in beautiful Southeast Michigan. Sun was out today, Mark, so that's always a good thing. And the weather hasn't been too terrible. We've had some days almost hit the 60s, so we'll take it this time of year.
I will say about the same thing. Of course, I'm in your favorite state. So we've had quite a few blue skies here in the last week or two. It's not been too bad. And yeah, pushing 60 at times. So spring will get here at some point, but not been shoveling a lot of snow this winter. Not too bad. But
Absolutely.
Been keeping track of Michigan coaching changes. That's what we've been doing more than shoveling snow. Yeah, it's usually shoveling snow about 50 times and a couple coaching changes, but now it's more like 50 coaching changes and shoveling snow just a couple times. Greg Scruggs coming in from Wisconsin. He was D-line coach there under Luke Fickell, played at Louisville, but he seems to be a pretty good addition.
Yeah, a guy who's not too far removed from playing in the National Football League, a younger guy, somebody who I think is going to have a lot of success on the recruiting trail. It's funny, and Mark, I don't think anything for me surprises me when it comes to recruiting. I know it doesn't surprise you anymore either, but one of the first things I saw when Mike Elston was announced to become the Chargers defensive line coach was a guy who had been trending positively with the crystal balls in Jalen Williams, who is a 4-star defensive tackle, I believe in the state of Illinois. And he put out a tweet like, y'all better change them crystal balls. And I think Wisconsin was kind of the number one threat to him from a Michigan perspective. Well, now they go and hire his defensive line coach. So interesting how quickly things can change on the recruiting front for a young kid. But yeah, I really like that potential hire. It hasn't been officially announced, but you see tweets from Wisconsin defensive linemen on Twitter, or X, whatever you call it nowadays, a little upset, heartbroken, and just the nature of the beast. Unfortunately, guys move up from program to program, and I think it's going to be a really good addition for Michigan. One of the things, Mike Elston did a tremendous job with the defensive line in his 2 years with Michigan as an on-field coach. Recruiting was excellent, and I think you get a guy like Scruggs who is going to bring that recruiting component, but then also hopefully be able to bring that on-field success as one of those 10 position coaches on the field to Michigan. So I really like the hire. I've heard nothing but really good things about him from what I've read, and I think that's about as good as you can do in February when kind of the coaching carousel is all but closed off at this point. So I think Sharon did a really good job with that one, and hopefully offset some of the potential losses. I know there's always Twitter rumors and things, but sounds like those main guys are going to stick around and stay at Michigan.
And Tanner, of course, the guy that's going to be working with Scruggs and leading the troop on defense is Wink Martindale. So Michigan stays within that Baltimore Ravens connection there with Martindale, who, of course, has been with the Giants for a couple of years, but before that, the Baltimore Ravens. So he's got a good reputation. How does that hire hit you?
At first, I didn't know what to think. A guy who was let go from Baltimore, a guy who I believe, I don't exactly know his departure from the New York Giants, how that all went down, but I know there were some issues with Brian Daboll and how he handled some of his position coaches that he had brought with him from Baltimore earlier this year in January, I believe. So, but a guy, if you're going to go get somebody to keep the continuity with the Ravens defensive scheme, it makes sense to go get the guy who is all these coordinators Michigan's had was, his understudies, right? So I think you go and get a guy like him. I don't think he's going to be, I would love if he was neutral on the recruiting trail, Mark, to be truthful, but I just have to think he's going to be a donut when it comes to recruiting. I mean, his last college job was with Jack Harbaugh at Western Kentucky. I mean,
2003.
recruiting in 2003 versus 2024 is a completely different animal. But also, you're at the FCS level, then D1 AA. So, it's going to be interesting to see how he connects with recruits, but it feels like a 1-year stopgap more than anything to keep the continuity. And then, maybe find a guy in late 2024 if he goes back to the NFL or whatever it is. But a guy to really just kind of come in and run the similar scheme to what Michigan's had the last 3 seasons, which I don't hate that aspect of it. But like I mentioned with Scruggs, now you got to go get recruiters, right? You can't have another 0 on the recruiting trail as a position coach if your coordinator is not going to be a recruiter. So you got to go find guys that are going to be like Scruggs, young, hungry, wanting to prove themselves and go out and recruit. So if they pair the position coaches that are open with guys who are great recruiters with a guy like Wink Martindale, I think it's a really good hire. Now, I think I would love to have Jesse Minter. I would absolutely love to still have Jesse Minter, but all things considered, again, at this point in the cycle, like, it's a pretty good job by Sharon, I think, to just go get the guy who kind of started it all with that Ravens defense and all the exotic blitzes and everything that comes with that package.
Yeah, if there's anything I haven't done since 2003, I probably don't know how to do it now, whatever that would be. But at the same time, the guy can flash an NFL resume that's a mile long. Maybe some recruits will take notice of that to say, hey, if just about anybody knows how to get you there, it would be me, because I've been with the Broncos and the Raiders and the Ravens and the Giants. And, I've coordinated defenses at the highest level. So I can help you develop to get there. Even though he may just, of course, he's new to the recruiting game or getting reestablished there after 20 some years. We're expecting a general manager hire, correct? Is that the Chicago Bears, Sean McGee?
Yeah, a guy who was here from, I believe, 2017 through 2021 before leaving for that job with the Bears, was under Jim Harbaugh's staff for 5 seasons, whatever that math is. And it sounded like Oklahoma was going to hire him to be some sort of guy in their recruiting department. And Sharon came in and gave him the general manager job, which hearing a lot about that lately, Mark. I saw somebody say that that's going to be a gig that pays as well as a coordinator soon, because coaches just want to coach. You can have somebody who can handle the NIL stuff, handle all the off-field issues with transfer portal and the money and all that sorts of stuff. So interesting to see that it's become a really big deal the last couple of years. You didn't really hear about that type of job. I don't know who started that with the title and that trend, but I think it's smart for Michigan. I know with Sharon taking over, one of the things he really wanted to do was, kind of revamp the recruiting department, make it bigger, expand it, make sure that there was nothing falling through the cracks when it comes to recruiting in 2024, as we know can be really, really interesting on the trail. So making sure that you have all your ducks in a row as a head coach, I think, is a really smart move for Sharon. And a guy, Sean McGee, I mean, he was really praised when he was in Ann Arbor for his first tenure. And, I don't know much about what he was doing in Chicago. Not a guy who's going to have on-field impacts, but I think that was a really, really good decision from Sharon to bring somebody in who's been here and kind of give him the keys of the kingdom when it comes to all the other stuff. That way Sharon can really focus on coaching as a first-time head coach.
He was in Chicago with the Bears for 1 year, so we'll not put that on Sean McGee, the mess that the Chicago Bears are. 1 year.
Speaking of 20 years, I think you go back 20 years for a good Chicago Bears team, maybe.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Just coming off a Super Bowl last night, Devin Hester was running down that sideline in 2006 in the Super Bowl for the Bears. So it's been a while. Yeah. Are you a Bears fan?
No, I'm a Lions fan.
Okay.
So last night was kind of rough as the teams were struggling, just thinking to myself, man, I think all Lions fans were thinking that. So, but what are you going to do? The Lions had never won a playoff game in my entire life, and I'm going to be 29 this summer, John. So it's not like I'm that young. So to get 2 in January felt pretty good. So we'll take an NFC Championship appearance, and we'll see what happens with them moving forward. But thankfully, I'm not a Chicago Bears fan.
I knew to wear my Lions colors, I guess, is what how that worked out. So what else is on my list here? Jaden Smith, So here's the situation, and here's what goes on with college football. Of course, he signed with Michigan in the 2024 class. we're looking at a Charlotte to North Carolina athlete, top 20 player in the state, 6'3", 201. Anyway, when all is said and done, he loses his position coach and decides that he wants out of his letter of intent. I think these athletes should, of course, have that right. And so you lose one player, but considering all that happened with the coaching staff, we haven't seen too many defections through the transfer portal, practically nothing. And I guess don't expect any more unless you're hearing different.
From what I've read, from what I've heard, some of the people that I know, it sounds like Michigan is being very competitive in making sure that their players stay where they are here at Ann Arbor. So I don't, unless something changes, I don't expect any big names that is going to shock the college football world to transfer. I know there's a lot of schools out there that are pushing for some of those key sophomores that are soon to be juniors on Michigan's roster. You think of some of the defensive linemen, some of the playmakers on offense. I know that there was, a few attempts on some of the bigger names, and Michigan thwarted those efforts, thankfully. They raised a lot of money in January. Helps when you're playing in the college football playoff and winning to be able to get into the pocketbooks of some of those donors a little bit more easily. So I don't expect any more big names, but look, I'm not an insider, so things can change. But just from what I've read and what people have told me and some of the friends that I know, I think if you're a Michigan fan, you can kind of breathe easy at this point. I think the players really hit it off with Wink Martindale. I know they were very involved in watching film and just kind of feeling that out. And Sharon wanted to make sure that his key guys were going to like the hire. And I think if you're one of those guys like Will Johnson, Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, Josiah Stewart, Derek Moore, like a lot of those guys coming up, Rod Moore, like you're going to be in an NFL defense again. And so that's going to be a really great way for them to flash and be able to, rise up those draft boards. So I don't expect any more guys to bounce. I did just see Joey Velasquez transferred to Ohio State as a walk-on. He's from Columbus. He was committed to Ohio State to play baseball, and Michigan offered him a football scholarship. It's kind of weird to me. You played at Michigan 5 years. You played on the football and baseball team, you won a national championship, and you're going to walk on. He's going to be a 6-year guy. So that's an interesting one. But to your original point, Jaden Smith, I'm bummed about that one. A little bit of an under the radar kind of guy, but a freak athlete. If he could grow into the position, kid's going to be a stud. I don't know exactly where he's going to end up now. I still think Michigan, hopefully Michigan's still an option for him, right? Let them re-recruit you. I don't know. I don't think that he enrolled early. So, he doesn't have to worry about transferring or anything like that, which is nice. But hopefully he gives Michigan a chance because I think he can be a ball player. But that was certainly a Chris Partridge guy. And so Partridge is dismissed in November. We ain't got to talk about all that, Mark. I think we've already spoken about that enough for one lifetime. But in his letter or farewell post, all the people he listed are now gone. Like every single person in there is at a different institution or with a different organization in the NFL. So hard to blame the kid to want to kind of reset, reevaluate, and make sure that, hey, maybe he takes another look at Michigan and maybe he looks at some other schools that were recruiting him in the process. And I hope he makes the best decision. But I think that kid's going to be a ball player, man. And so that one stings a little bit. But it sounds like everyone else makes it seem like the class is locked in. So, I think with the continuity of Sharon, that makes it a little bit easier to hang on to some of those guys that, maybe if they went to an outside hire, it wouldn't have been the same situation. So, yeah, it's been interesting around these parts, coming off a national championship. I get very reactionary around this stuff because I want continued success for Michigan. I'm very emotionally invested. Should probably dial that back a little bit, Mark, but it's one of my favorite things in the world, man. You're a college football guy. You get it. You understand. So, you're coming off a national championship. You're riding the high of that. You're basking in that. And at the same time, you have a lot of these coaches leaving and, players are question marks. And so it's been very interesting to still enjoy the national championship, but also look to the future and know that, Sharon Moore is doing everything he can to keep everything in place and continue the success and not let it be a flash in the pan. So, yeah, it's been very interesting. Like, I don't know if other teams that have won national championships fans have felt like this, but it's kind of a really weird feeling.
Yeah, I am going to guess that years ago that fans basked in the glow of a national championship a lot longer. I just think that the the news cycle moves too fast. The world moves too fast. People are always forward thinking about, okay, what's next? What's next? Okay, we won a national championship 2 days ago, but what about X, Y, and Z recruit? We got to get them. And let's look at the schedule for next year. Oh, there's a way too early top 25. We're only number 8. Yeah, I think people just need to embrace and cherish and soak it in and take it in and relax a little bit.
Yeah, especially I don't think Michigan is playing basketball this year, so we really don't have anything to watch otherwise. So, but yeah, that's a great point. I'm guilty of that too because I always look to the next season. I follow college football every single day. Like I'm checking the message boards. I'm on Twitter. I'm talking trash, having fun, and I think that's why I love college football so much because in the NFL, the NFL does a really good job of making sure it's in the news every single day, but you don't have typically these movements all the time, right? And that's what sometimes can be really frustrating when you're on the wrong end of it, but makes it really fun. As you know, in Ohio, like when the Buckeyes are getting all these transfers, like you're looking to the next season and you have that hope and that hype, and it's a lot of fun. And so it's almost like it's that old saying of enjoy the journey more than the destination, right? Like when Michigan won the national championship, I didn't know what to do. Like I really felt like Ricky Bobby. It's like I don't know what to do with my hands. Like just like Mike Samerslow gets a pick, and I'm like, Michigan's going to win the national championship. And yeah, we did shit. We had champagne and we took videos and we FaceTime. I FaceTime my family and stuff. But it was like, all right, what now? Right? And the typical response is, "Oh, you're losing the playoffs. All right, I'm looking at next season like I have the last 2 years." But now it's like, what the hell do I do? And so you're right. You just bask in it. You enjoy it. And anybody that says anything, there's really nothing that they can say. They just want to get under your skin, which people get under my skin, Mark. I on Twitter. It's a tough thing for me, but I love having fun with it. So it's a fun back and forth with the rival fans and everything. But yeah, nobody can say anything until next January. There's no matter what, right? Like or next November, Saturday after Thanksgiving, whatever happens there, somebody can say something. But other than that,
See, that's kind of another issue I've got with college football because it's not like the NFL and you don't tend to respect if you root for one of the best teams in the country, you don't necessarily respect that many teams on the schedule. And there's this mentality that, and I get it, but if you look at the schedule and you're like, okay, we got to worry about them, and them, the rest of it. Okay, just get me to the Penn State game, get me to the Ohio State game, maybe a big non-conference game. Of course, Texas is going to be that game this year for Michigan. That with these conferences, for as much as I don't like no more Pac-12 and all this redistribution and realignment, it's going to bulk up these schedules a little bit more where it's not, okay, Western Kentucky and East Carolina and then Rutgers and somebody else. And then we're going to play somebody in 5 weeks. And I'm really not that interested until then, where it's all about what are we doing to get better to play them in 5 weeks, where it's going to be more a regular occurrence of playing somebody that the fan base is going to respect.
Yeah, it's a tough balancing act, and I'm with you because I grew up watching college football in the early 2000s as a youngster, and just I loved all the rivalries, man. That's what really I think drew me to this sport. And so you have in Oregon the Civil War, and you have USC, UCLA, and you've got all these just this history, the Apple Cup, like all this history in the Pac-12, and it's just gone because the Big Ten decided, well, we got to keep up with the SEC, keep up with the Joneses. So I'm with you on that. But at the same time, looking at the schedule, it's like it's hard not to get excited, right? Because in addition to Texas, Michigan hosts USC, they host Oregon, they go to Washington, they go to Ohio State, they host Michigan State. So it's like no matter what, you got your 2 biggest rivals on the schedule. There's no Penn State now for the time being, which is okay with me. And it's just, yeah, it's like this season, the whole time, every time we talked, and every time I talked with John, it's like, get me to November, get me to Happy Valley, and then get me to the game, and then give me the Big Ten championship, and then give me the playoffs, right? It's like, it's just kind of like more relief when Michigan will win than anything. And it's like, oh, can you get the style points as well? And now with the 12-team playoff, you're not going to have to worry about style points as much. And you also have some room for error, which pros and cons, right? One of the best things about college football has been that razor thin margin of error. you cannot afford to lose a game typically to get into the playoffs, especially this year. A team that went undefeated wasn't able to get in, so that's the downside of it. But you potentially get a true champion because it's played similar to an NFL type of, format with, 4 teams getting the bye. I know the NFL gets 2 teams with a bye now, but, something similar. And also, I saw the schedule for the 12-team college football playoff, Mark. That looks amazing. I think they have a game on Friday on campus, and then Saturday it's like noon, 3:30, 7:30, just like a normal college football slate, man. So, and then you obviously got the next set of games before the Final Four. So it's going to be different. It's going to be maybe a little weird for us to get used to, for us to have watched football our whole lives and known college football as this kind of one thing. Even going from the BCS to the 14 playoff wasn't that big of an adjustment. So it's going to be really interesting this season. But it's going to be a lot of fun, man. So to your point, the schedules, hey, you can go 10-2, 9-3 and make the playoff because you played 6 top 10 teams. I think that's a good thing for the sport.
Yeah, I think it is, and it's not. I think it's
right. There's pros and cons to it.
Yeah, there are pros and cons to it. There are going to be games that are going to be less meaningful, and this is one of them. Ohio State and Michigan is just flat out going to be less meaningful. Maybe not to pick your person that lives and dies with it. Whatever's in your heart and in your head maybe can't be changed, and that's a great thing. Hold on to that, but the logistics and just the nuts and bolts of it say it's not as important.
No. And that's, you and I, it still means a hell of a lot, right?
Yeah.
And even if Michigan and Ohio State play 3 times, because there's a potential, like Michigan, Ohio State, 2022 would have played twice, could have played 3 times. 21, maybe they could. I don't know. Yeah, they both had 1 Big Ten loss, so they both could have played. They could have played twice again, and potentially in the playoff. So. But I don't know how. I don't know.
They would have played twice and maybe 3 times this year.
Right. Exactly. They would have. Yeah. They would have played. I don't know how to wrap my head around that one. But it's still going to be meaningful. But to your point, yeah. I mean, there was going to the Ohio State Michigan game in November. There was kind of a finality, and not just because of the last dance stuff with Michigan's team that we all were kind of hoping wasn't the case. But you trade that for a national championship, right, with Jim Harbaugh leaving. So you kind of had that finality in the air, but then also knowing college football is changing forever moving forward. And then that game is not a de facto playoff game. It is maybe a game to get into a playoff. Most years, they're probably both going to get in. And so then you potentially play in the Big Ten championship, which, by the way, how the hell do you figure that out with 18 teams and a 9-game conference schedule? I'm not paid to understand that, so I'm not going to try to.
Those are the kind of things I work out. I'm not paid to do it, but I just like doing it. So I've got my format and my setup.
So, obviously these decisions are all made by the TV companies that have invested billions of dollars in each conference. So Michigan and Ohio State and USC and Oregon are all going to play the big dogs, right? They're all going to play each other. So how do we decide that a team like Michigan or Ohio State goes 10-2 with 2 conference losses because they play 4 of the best teams in the Big Ten versus a team that maybe has a really good year because they've got a lot of seniors and they've got a lot of guys coming back, maybe like a Northwestern, for example, they go 11-1, let's say. But they didn't beat any of the top. So how do we decide who's going to be playing the conference championship? I don't know how they're going to work that out. If you have any ideas,
it's a balanced schedule. So nobody should be having a more difficult schedule than anyone else.
I don't know.
Look at Northwestern schedule. If I just pulled up Northwestern schedule, I have no idea what it is, but I can about guarantee it's just, it's roughly as tough as Ohio State and Michigan's and anybody else's.
I'd love to see it. I don't have it here in front of me.
Northwestern is playing Washington, Indiana, Maryland, Wisconsin, Iowa, Purdue, Ohio State, Michigan, Illinois.
Okay, so they do have Ohio State, Michigan on there, but it's still, I don't know. With 18 teams, it's going to be really hard to figure out when you don't have a conference to determine when you.
Oh, it is.
So
and it's not necessarily going to be fair, but it's going to go based on record. That's going to be first and foremost.
Yep.
And then, of course, you're going to have ties.
Yep.
So you're going to break ties by head to head. If you don't have the head to head, then there's a number of ways you can do it. Just like what was going to be determined this year if Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State all split their games against each other. They're going to have a set of tiebreakers.
Well, we knew we didn't have to worry about that with James Franklin coaching the Nittany Lions. 10-2 with losses to Ohio State, Michigan, as tail as old as time. That's not going to happen this year, though. Thankfully for James. Sorry, I had to get my shot in there. I don't get it sometimes with the media love for Coach Franklin, but to your point, man, it's college football has been changing. It's always changing, and it's changed more than ever in the last 3 years.
Yes,
I mean, with NIL being introduced in 2021,
yes.
2022 is when Texas, Oklahoma are announced to join the SEC, and then a few months later is when USC, UCLA are announced, and then obviously this year Washington, Oregon get in before the season in 23. So,
yeah,
goodness gracious, yeah, I can't keep track of it all, but I do because I'm a sicko and I'm addicted to it.
You are. That's why we got you here. And it has changed more than at any time in history. I would argue that easily. NIL, transfer
100%.
portal, expanded playoff. 2 biggest brands in the Big 12 leave, go to the SEC. 4 of the biggest brands leave the Pac-12. The Pac-12 completely collapses and joins the Big. All that happening in 3 years. Yes.
Yeah, and I think from Big 12 football perspective, clearly not as strong as it was before on a football side of things. But basketball, man, whew, that's a hell of a conference. With Arizona coming in, you've already got Houston, you got Kansas.
We don't talk about basketball.
No, I know. I'm just thinking about the conferences from a whole. But yeah, it's been crazy. So, this was kind of the last year. And so to your point about basking in it, Michigan gets to kind of say that, hey, we won kind of the last national championship of that era, right? Of the BCS era. I would consider the BCS and the playoff kind of the same era. And so now we move to this 12-team playoff, and more teams are going to have a chance. There's going to be a lot of TV money to be made because that's all we care about anymore. And I'm going to watch the hell out of it. It's going to be exciting. But to your point, you take away a lot of the meaning from these big-time rivalry games, right? Like Michigan-Ohio State's always the number one viewed game. Like even when it's Michigan's down, right, in the past, or maybe when Ohio State was 6-6 that one year, like it's always number one or at least top 3. Are people going to get sick of that if they see it last week of the regular season and in the conference championship, potentially in the playoffs? I don't know.
Yeah, it loses a special. I think this is my theory, Tanner. The first time is going to be interesting, special. It's going to be a novelty. It's going to be like, oh, they just played last week. Now they're going to play in the Big Ten championship game. This is crazy. So the first time is going to be kind of cool. Like they almost played. I don't know if I'm predating you. 2006, right?
Oh, I remember. I remember watching Arkansas rooting for the Razorbacks like hell.
Yes.
And USC, UCLA, the Bruins got a huge upset. So I'm 11 years old. Like we just need Arkansas, and then Chris Leak just threw for 3 or 4 touchdowns. So it's almost happened before.
So the thought that season was this will be crazy. This will be unbelievable. But if that happened over and over. Like if we're 6 years into this and 3 times Ohio State and Michigan have played in the Big Ten championship game, although you're going to have rematches all over the place, but they're not rivalry rematches most likely. Now here's my big issue. Here's one of the biggest cons for me in this. And of course, if we still had the Big Ten the way it is right now and not the 4 West Coast teams, then like we just mentioned a couple minutes ago, we would have had a rematch 3 consecutive years. That's overkill.
Yeah.
But hopefully a strong USC, a strong Oregon, we'll see if Washington can bounce back with Jed Fish and so forth, will break up that monopoly. Otherwise, I'm not so concerned about the 2 teams rematching the next week. You know what I'm more concerned about? If they would not have not only, Tanner, would they have played in 3 consecutive Big Ten championship games, they were so far in front of everyone else that the game in November wouldn't have mattered. Who won?
Right.
They both would have just gone and played in the Big Ten championship. It wasn't like Michigan's in, but Ohio State's got to win to play them again next week. No, both of them are just in.
That's a good point. I didn't even think about that. Yeah,
that's what I'm going to have an issue with if they show up in November and again, with USC, Washington, Oregon, it's less likely to happen, but where either both of them are already in. So like this game doesn't mean anything, or Michigan has to win. Ohio State doesn't have to win. So how much are they really going to, that whole, and it's not like you get the chance that okay, this doesn't mean anything for us, but we can knock them out. Maybe there's that depending on the way it plays out, that incentive.
That's a good point. Yeah, there's a lot of scenarios that you can come up with around this that are just like, what are we doing here? But things do need to evolve. I don't know if this is the evolution I would have picked, but yeah, it's ever changing. It's always been changing since I've been alive. I feel like there's always different things happening in college football, going from 11 game schedules to 12 game schedules, and the BCS, and now the playoff, and now the 12 team playoff. So it's certainly very interesting. But I will say, I am very excited for the new college football video game to come back out. And I will, be messing with all these 12-team playoffs. That'll be fantastic. So, still a kid at heart, Mark, and looking forward to finally having a college game to play for the first time since, God, I think I graduated high school the year they stopped making it. So, and now my wife and I are expecting our first child. So, I don't know how much it comes out in July. Child's coming in July. I don't know how much time we'll get to play, Mark, but we'll find some time.
I could fill you in how much time you'll have, and I think you know what that answer is going to be. I've been there.
I think I should just sell my golf clubs at this point, man, and just maybe re-up it in a few years. Just buy whatever newest irons are out then. Right? Just get some money now, because I don't think those are going to collect dust, I'm sure.
Here's my one parenting advice for you. You teach them young, you set the precedent, and then they hit like 5 years old, I'm telling you, and they do what they're told, and they can play by themselves, and they leave you alone if need be. Not that I wanted to be left alone. People are going to think I was a bad dad. No, of course I was playing with my kids, of course. But yeah, that's what you do.
Hey man, we'll teach them right from wrong. Teach them what colors to wear. Maybe some of the Honolulu blue, like the shirt you got on right now, and maybe some maize and blue, like the helmet behind you. And we'll brainwash them. I don't care. Indoctrination, I think, is what that's called. And they're not going to have a choice. My wife is a Nebraska grad. She's like, can I have no, these kids are going to be Michigan fans. I'm sorry. That's what it's going to be. So we've already got a national championship onesie, a couple other Michigan onesies. So they've got no choice, Mark. They're going to be born into it. That's for sure.
I would have said in the past that they have no chance, but I can't say that. They are the champs. They are,
and the Lions. Yeah,
they are born. Yes,
it's unbelievable.
Do we know if it's a son or daughter yet?
No, my wife doesn't want to find out yet. Okay. So she wants to take it to the delivery is when we find out.
Okay,
and I want to know. Cool. I want to know yesterday. We had a chance to get the genetic testing done, and she's like, "Nope." I was like, "All right, cool." There's some hills I'll die on, Mark. That's not one of them. I'll just wait. No. But I would be lying if I said I wasn't dying to know. So.
You're a smart man. The pregnancy, all this business, this is all her.
Absolutely. Yes. I'm out running I'm getting blooming onions from Chili's, for God's sakes, at like 9:00 on a weeknight. That's what I'm doing. So, I haven't been as active on a lot of the podcasts because I got to be on call to go pick up some butter popcorn from the grocery store potentially late at night. So we have thin walls. I hope she's not hearing this because she may get mad at me, but it's all in good fun. So
I'm sure she's an ardent viewer of the Voice of College Football, so she's going to see it anyway. Of course,
she does. Yeah, she always asks me if I'm, if what I'm doing is live. So she loves to hop on, check it out. Maybe I don't know. Maybe she's in there with a burner account talking trash. Who knows?
Let me ask you this, Tanner, before we let you go, and we appreciate your time tonight, of course, as preparing to be a dad this summer. That's very exciting. That's awesome stuff. Believe me, there will be nothing you've ever done that will have that same impact. It's an amazing experience. I'm sure you've heard that from other people.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing like it. Mine are 26 and 24 now, and it's still certain things get to me. It's just unbelievable.
There's already things on TV that are getting to me now. And, we're 5.5 months out. Like, there are already things I'm like, don't put on Make-A-Wish on ESPN. I will leave the room, is what I'm saying. I'm an emotional guy already. I wear my heart on my sleeve. It's already getting worse, and the baby's not even here yet.
That's what I'm talking about.
When I heard the ultrasound, I was like, I'm going to fight this. I'm going to be a tough guy. But it was cool, man. It's definitely cool. It's life-changing.
That is awesome. Let me ask you this, Tanner. Maybe I shouldn't go there, but you referenced it a couple times earlier. Who runs that Twitter account, that X account there at Blue by 90?
I'm not on it. That's not me. I'm on my personal account.
We get into a squabble once in a while.
Well, I saw, so there's the Blue by 90 account, and then there's the Double B's Big House. I saw that one. I saw you guys are going back and forth. That's my good guy Brian. He and I do a podcast called Blue by the Numbers, where we talk about the PFF grades and how sometimes we don't agree with them all the time. So he's super analytical, very, very smart gentleman. And so he's also a wizard with Excel, I think, because the things he does, I don't pretend to be able to try. But typically it's Justin on the account, I think. And then our website manager is also putting out the content on the Twitter. So, but that's never me. I'm a friendly guy on Twitter until I'm not, you know.
Tell Justin, we love Justin, of course. Justin was our first contact, Blue by 90. We love Justin. I told Justin a couple of weeks ago, I said, you can come on again at some point, but
he's Hollywood, man. He's wrapped up in, working with Champion Circle. He does a fantastic job. He's one of my very good friends, and he busts his ass. I mean, I'm a big time phone call guy. I work in sales. I like to talk to people. I'll call him up and I'm like, he's probably got meetings going on. I should have some meetings myself, but he's a grinder, man. So he does so much to keep that thing running. And there's a lot of behind the scenes work for anybody that's in the chat that goes to any of the tailgates or sees any of the stuff that we do. Like, that dude has a lot on his plate, and he just, he hits a home run every single time with it. So he's an awesome dude, and, very excited to be working alongside him and doing what we do. But yeah, he's a hard worker, man. He crushes it. So, but yeah, he's a little Hollywood now.
Yeah, well, no doubt. He's been on here 50 times. So I have to thank Justin. He's done a great job for years coming on here on a regular basis. And I pulled back a couple times after getting in some back and forths on Blue by 90. I thought, these guys are good to me. I don't know who's running this account. And
it could be any of us,
I hope these guys get that everything's good and we're just having fun here.
Oh man, like there's some Ohio State fans that I follow. I don't know if you do content with them or not. Some of the guys that they do some Bleacher Report stuff. Man, there's so many times where I'm like, I don't like what you're saying, but I'm just gonna scroll up. I'm just gonna keep it moving. And but that's what's fun, man. We all have different views and we have different thoughts on our teams, and we go at it, but it's all love at the end of the day. And so, I will be honest, I like to get my impressions, because, trying to get that money from Elon Musk coming through to my bank account every month is, you got to get the views up. So, I've noticed my quality has gone down, quantity's gone up, and, I will tweet things and I know exactly what I'm doing. I'll just say that. So if you ever see anything, like, I know what I'm doing. I know that's going to get 100,000 views on there. I'm just, trying to get some extra bread, as the kids say.
100,000 views on Twitter. Yeah, that's not me. I was just happy that somebody contacted me a few months ago. They're like, you can make money on X, and I was like, well, I guess I've heard of it. I never really looked into it, and I started to look into it, and I got that checked off and that checked off. But man, the impressions, I went from like 60,000 a month to like 600,000 a month. But I still got a long way to go.
Subconsciously too, right? Like you start,
okay, I'm going to start poking some people here and there, and that really revs people up. Nobody cares that I post a link and say, "Hey, look at my great video I just put."
Right.
No, nobody cares about that.
I know.
You still have to do it, but no, it's more about, I just slammed so and so, and here we go. People are going to jump in.
Yeah, absolutely. You try to catch the algorithm, see if it pushes it to people's Twitter or whatever, how that works. But yeah, if you see stuff where you're like, this guy's going a little off the rails, I know what I'm doing. I'm just, I'm just trying to get the views up.
Awesome. You can see there on the banner that John's got the Michigan show, of course, on Tuesday night, 8:00 Eastern time. And he's bringing in some Ravens Wire folks to break down, I'm sure, Wink Martindale and the whole deal there. Tanner, what do you have going on this week?
Man, not a lot. It's the off season, so just focusing on the full-time work and just kind of being around when needed to do podcasts with the fellas. We're trying to do podcasts as much as we can, but there's 4 of us that typically go on the Blue by 90 podcast, and it's the news is always, the news cycle is crazy the last month for Michigan. So it's like we put up a podcast and then a position coach leaves or somebody's hired. So it's like we're trying to encapsulate it, once a week, and just kind of where we at, who's left, who's still standing on the staff. Elston and Clinkscale are gone, and it's like, thought they were staying, or we thought Clinkscale was staying. He told the team that he was staying, and it's like 2 days later he's gone on Saturday morning, and it's like, all right. So we're, it's tough to stay ahead of it. We don't do kind of this, we don't do a similar schedule to you where you're live a lot. It's like we try to put one out and have it have some relevance for a few days so people can listen to it, because it's not live, it's pre-recorded. So, just with the all season, man, just kind of enjoying it, just relaxing, trying to, stay off a lot of the 24/7 and on 3, because it just sometimes depresses me at certain points. And then I also see sometimes an echo chamber with the negativity. But man, Michigan's in a really good spot. Just won the national championship, and making some really good hires. Obviously, I'm biased, but I think they're solid hires, what they've done so far. So I think Sharon's doing a great job. But yeah, man. Other than that, not watching college basketball, I can tell you that much. So I lived in Nebraska for 10 years. I had some people texting me about the game, and I was like, dude, I don't care. The Lions just won the NFC Championship, and Michigan won the national championship. You think Michigan losing to Nebraska basketball is going to hurt me when they're 2-9 in the Big Ten? Come on now. So, yeah, maybe Michigan hockey, Michigan wrestling, watching some of that. But yeah, man, just kind of relaxing, hanging out, enjoying time with the wife and puppy, and just getting ready to be a dad at the end of the day.
Nice. I real quick want to make sure I do right by Christopher. He had asked the question, and I know I threw up the general manager job, and we talked about Sean McGee coming in, but Christopher specifically asked what the general manager is going to do. So before you go on this, Tanner, I've got to think that unless you've heard something differently, they're going to take the role of what a NFL or professional sports GM is. Keep the money in line,
right?
The number of available roster spots, meaning we got this many scholarships left. All that type of maneuvering.
Yeah, I would assume so. A lot of hiring in the recruiting department as far as the off-field folks go. I think that they're probably going to split from, because typically in the past, you've had a director of football operations or director of player personnel, whatever the title was. That, titles always are kind of weird. They're always all over the place depending on the organization, the institution. But I'm assuming what they're going to do is probably have it split to where somebody's head of all the analysts and the off-field assistant coaches, and then Sean McGee being head of all the recruiting. And they may even be more granular. They may have Sean McGee have a team full of people that focus on NIL and making sure that they're meeting with agents of players and all that stuff, which is crazy to say about college football players. But then also have maybe somebody just focused strictly on recruiting as well. So I don't know how they're going to have it siloed off. But yeah, I mean, it would make sense. Like, you're focusing all the negotiations with these agents who, by the way, one thing I will say, there should be some sort of, just like the NFL, you've got to pass some sort of test to be an agent in college football at this point. Like, you can't just, some guy took a couple marketing classes his junior year and now he's representing players taking 10%. What are we doing here? We got to have some sort of, some sort of standard when it comes to this. Because some of the things I've heard, I'm not going to share it on the air, Mark, but some of the things I've heard are wild by some of these so-called agents. So we're as we talked about, we're in a really weird spot with college football right now.
That is an excellent point, and I've not heard that talked about. With all that I've talked about and heard other people talk about, that agent standard, I've not heard.
I mean, if you you should be an attorney.
It's a good
right?
point.
And you should have to have a JD. Like, I think that's bare minimum. Because if you're out here negotiating and you're dealing with contracts, like, you want an attorney. Like, I don't think a lot of these guys are that. There's some for sure. I'm sure there are some that have dipped their toes from working in pro sports down into the college level, but there needs to be some sort of standard to make sure that these guys aren't getting ripped off. Just like, was that the player at Florida who was drafted by the Bears was supposed to give like a percentage of his pre-tax earnings on his first contract. Now you got to read that, but like, what are we doing here, man? Like, we talk about looking out for the kids. That needs to be something that they put in place. And I don't have any faith in the NCAA to do it. I think this Big Ten SEC thing is going to be really interesting to see how they kind of start to command college football right now. And there needs to be something that changes.
They were all nice and took a light approach, but if you really read, they had enough words in there talking about, there's things going on that we got to deal with that need to be dealt with, and we're going to have some influence on that. Yeah, you're going to have some influence, all right.
Yeah, and to Aaron's point, He said, I'm willing to bet if any of us saw what goes on behind the scenes with NIL, would we be shocked? I know a lot of the mild stuff. It's crazy. I can only imagine some of the deeper, darker secrets out there. Some of the things I've heard are like, it's unbelievable. It's really, really unbelievable. Some of the things I've heard. And I've just heard a few stories. So, maybe we could talk about that offline, Mark, but I don't want to air anyone's dirty laundry, but it is nuts.
Yeah, it is nuts. All right, Tanner, we appreciate you stopping by, man.
Of course.
Take care. Take care of the wife, of course. She
Absolutely.
is first priority.
Yes.
And that beautiful baby of yours.
Yes, thank you.
And, hopefully we will have time before spring practice. There's a number of things I could hit you up on, quarterback and all that other business, but that's on down the line here 3-4 weeks from now, right?
Yeah, I think so. Typically, they would have started practice on Wednesday, on Valentine's Day, as Jim Harbaugh said, because they love football. But they got to hire guys to coach them and give the guys some time to recover from the playing a month ago. So
that's right. They do start early.
They're pushing it back. Well, Jim Harbaugh said before he left, he said we're pushing it back, and then he took the Chargers job. But I'm assuming they're probably going to be early March. I would think. Yeah.
Because you guys have typically played the first Saturday of April as the spring game.
Yeah, last year it was on April 1st. This year it's April 20th. So, yeah, which is a very meaningful date to some in Ann Arbor. So we'll see how the spring game and Hash Bash go together. But hopefully it'll be a little bit warmer. I don't know why. I know they want to get it done so guys can study for finals. But, would be nice if it was a little bit warmer. So yeah, I think it'll probably be pushed back, first week of March if I had to guess.
All right, Tanner. Good to see you, man.
Hey, likewise, Mark. Appreciate you having me on, man.
Thank you. Have a good one.
See ya.
Tanner Wooten, Blue by 90. Keep in mind that we've got the Ocho coming up tonight here at the Voice of College Football right here on the main channel. That's with John D'Adamo. The Ocho is coming up at 8 p.m. Eastern Time simultaneously. So get the phone, get the laptop, whatever you need to do. 2 devices. West Virginia Fan Zone. That's over in the Big 12 channel. And, of course, the West Virginia channel, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. USC Trojans live. Sorry, Tim. Trojan Conquest Live. We've changed the name. Why do we have to be a wild card on that USC channel? Why? Trojan Conquest Live. USC Trojans Live. 11 o'clock Eastern Time. Tonight on the USC channel. And this being Monday, you've got another dose of Michigan Live with John D'Adamo. Tuesday, 8 o'clock Eastern Time over on the Michigan channel. So just so much going on with the coaching changes at Michigan. I wanted to present a couple special editions here over the weekend. We talked to Nelson Hubble on Saturday morning. And then, of course, Tanner Wooten from Blue by 90. Appreciate y'all being here. We are continuing our TV rating series. Coaches' rankings are coming. Where will Sharon Moore be ranked? That's kind of a tough call, but we will have him ranked among all the coaches in the Power 5 and the Big 10, of course. So be looking out for the coaches' rankings. And we will continue to deliver right here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you being here. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything. I don't believe so. The Ochos at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. Join John then. Joey Foster with the West Virginia Fan Zone, 8 o'clock Eastern Time. USC Live with Matt, Tim, and myself at 11 Eastern. See you next time.